Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our next Q&A the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Perry
that's right.
Hostetler's favorite holiday. I will say, I know in his intro he talked about how he put up the picture of Santa getting stood on top of by a turkey and
in
said,
his message
"Wait
Sunday,
your turn,
right.
fat boy." And I'm over here, and he said, "Yeah, like the people that view Thanksgiving as the pregame to Christmas, I view Thanksgiving as the pregame to Christmas."
Look, why
It just
is
prepares.
Thanksgiving Perry's favorite holiday?
'Cause he likes to eat.
It's official permission to overeat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one day a year, his normal habit gets sanctioned.
He likes to.
Yep.
He likes.
You just got that, didn't you?
He likes to eat, and he gets to watch the Lions play football, which the Lions might actually win this year. They're
listen,
8-2.
They are. They're one of the best teams in the NFL.
They're playing
so
some great football.
Kudos, Lions fans. I'm happy for
All right,
you.
well, I need to know, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? Like when you sit down at the table, if it's like, if this isn't on my Thanksgiving table, I'm going to be very upset.
Man, see, I'm pretty easy to please. I really don't have that. Let's just say that probably the one unique Thanksgiving food that I really enjoy seeing there is cranberry relish.
Oh.
No. I know what you're thinking.
Cranberries.
You're thinking open a can and
That
put
is what
that
I'm
jello-y
thinking.
junk out. Hate that stuff. But what my wife will do is she'll take like regular cranberries and cook them and put like oranges and some kind of nuts in there. And it's like, whoa, that is so good with any meat you have for Thanksgiving.
Nice. This is where my southern roots are going to show right here. I'm a mashed potatoes, corn, gravy, and biscuits guy.
You know
That's
what?
all I need
I
for
get it.
Thanksgiving. The turkey doesn't even matter.
Seriously?
As long as I got
Okay.
mashed potatoes, corn, gravy, and biscuits, I'm good.
Nice. All
That's
right.
I'll sit there with a big bowl and just eat that the
Very
whole time.
traditional.
That
That's
is
good.
that is my food right there. Well, let's go ahead and let's dive into today's topic. I just want to remind everybody, so we're out of our deconstruction series now. So each week during our Q&A, we're going to be picking a topic. Maybe it has to do with the message that we just did, or there might be an influx of questions about evolution. And we're like, all right, we're going to talk about evolution today. And we're just going to dive into any questions that have been submitted by you guys about that topic. And today we're going to be talking about gratitude, thankfulness, kind
How
of
fitting.
a play off of what
Yeah.
Perry talked about.
Yes.
So, Dave, I know you weren't the one that spoke this Sunday,
I was not.
but to the best of your ability, because I know that Perry's, Perry, can you give a...
He is.
Just kidding, Perry, we love you. Can you give a summary of Perry's message from this past Sunday?
I think I can. Because what Perry did is Perry kind of weaved together Thanksgiving with communion, which we celebrated on Sunday, which is Thanksgiving is a big part of,
Yeah,
of what
for
communion is. So essentially what he did is he told us some of the interesting details about the origin of Thanksgiving as a holiday, which I thought was really insightful. Then he connected that with the story of the Passover from the Old Testament, because the Passover was like the last plague that God brought on Egypt in order to free his people.
Yeah.
And there are some fascinating parallels between Thanksgiving and the Passover. And then he tied that all into communion, which is all about Jesus, who is the type of the Passover, the Lamb of God slain for the sins of the world, and how when we accept Christ, we are freed from death to have life everlasting. And then that brought us into our celebration of communion.
Yeah, he navigated a lot on Sunday.
It was a bunch of stuff.
It did a
was
very
so
good
much
job.
stuff. If he was critiquing me, he would have said, too much stuff, Dave.
Did you tell him
But
that?
I won't. No, I would never say that to Perry. Oop, I guess I just
I was
did.
saying, I feel like you slight handed over. I do want to remind everybody, Perry did give us a challenge on Sunday, and that was to go and read the rest of Exodus 7 through 12, because there was a lot more meat on the bone, as he said, that he couldn't talk about because he didn't have time.
And
So
you got a bunch of things happening there.
yes, you have a bunch of
Yes.
things happening. So if you haven't done that yet, I encourage you to go do that. It's great. It gives a lot more detail about the Passover and the plagues and what Perry
And
was
wasn't it
talking about.
interesting? I love what Perry brought out when he said that the plagues, which God was doing for a purpose to motivate the Egyptians, Pharaoh, to do the right thing and to set his people free, always has a good purpose behind it. But they were all assaults on the gods
Yeah.
that the Egyptians worshipped, and you can miss that when you go through it.
Oh, yeah,
So
easily.
when you kind of dive into that a little bit and maybe do just a bit of research, you'll realize that God was demonstrating the things you worship are insufficient. I am the true God. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, it is really cool. We could do a whole Q&A just on the plagues alone.
Totally.
Because, like, what, the first 4 plagues were able to be replicated by
Yes.
the Pharaoh's
His
magistrates.
magicians, that's right.
Yeah, and then after that it wasn't. And yeah, I just I just remember I had a conversation with you about it a few months ago, and I'm just like, there's so much more, because I remember, like, in Sunday school when I was a kid, that just, there was the plague of this and then this, and then you look at it, it's like, oh no, like, this is God's really going at these people.
He's communicating a powerful message.
Maybe.
By the way, in his effort to turn the Egyptians to himself that they might find life.
Yeah.
God is always interested in drawing people to himself.
For sure. Maybe one day we'll do a Q&A on
It
the
sounds
10
like we need
plagues.
to now.
Sounds like we need
Yeah.
to. Sounds like it's going to be very interesting. If you want that, go submit a question about it. There we go. There's our plug. All right. Let's go ahead and let's hop into the first question. This is a really good question. I feel like a lot of people ask this question every
Okay.
single day. This person said, I've been told that Christians are supposed to be thankful for everything, but how can I be thankful for horrible things that happen, like the death of someone you love or getting cancer?
Yeah, okay. That's a good question. This notion, I'm gonna probably bank on the fact that this person who asked the question was told this in reference to 1 Thessalonians 5:18, which says, in everything give thanks. Some versions, like the NIV, the New International Version, will say, in every circumstance give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. And then they're told, see, this means you're supposed to be thankful for everything.
Yeah.
However, that's a misinterpretation of that verse of Scripture. If you read it carefully, you realize it doesn't say give thanks for everything, but in everything. Don't give thanks for every circumstance, but in every circumstance. There are some things that we're not thankful for. The love chapter, right? 1 Corinthians 13, right? So it's talking about love and chronicles some characteristics about love. One of them is that love does not rejoice in evil, but always rejoices, is grateful for what is true.
Yeah.
So we don't give thanks for things that are evil. We don't give thanks for things that are lies. I'm not thankful for disease. I'm not thankful for injuries. I'm not thankful for calamities. I'm not thankful for those things. That's not what the Bible's telling us. I'm not thankful for lies and deceptions. But rather what we're being told in that verse is be thankful in all things, in all circumstance. And if you think about it, really what God is calling us to do is have a radical shift in our perspective of life in being able to obey this command. So that shift involves at least a couple of things that occur to me. First, God is saying, when bad things happen, they will.
Yep, they will.
In those bad things, don't lose sight of the good things that God has brought and is bringing into your life. Absolutely. I have found, I think this is true. It's true in my life, Josh. Maybe you've experienced it. People I talk to, it seems to work this way. Bad things tend to have this gravitational pull to them that it just wants to take all of our focus.
Yep.
So that everything we see is colored by the bad thing, the bad circumstance, the difficulty. And when we lose sight of the good that God is doing and we only see the bad, well, then we become fearful, insecure, angry, bitter, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So God is saying, don't lose sight of the good stuff, even when bad stuff is in your life.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a story I heard so many years ago. There's a Bible commentary. He was a pastor. He wrote a commentary on the Bible that's very helpful. Mm-hmm. His name was Matthew Henry. And on one occasion, he got mugged and his wallet was stolen. And somebody came up to him and said, how do you feel about the fact that, God let this happen in your life? His response was genius. He said, one, I am thankful that this has never happened to me before. He said, 2, I'm thankful that even though he took my wallet, he didn't take my life.
Yep.
3rd, I'm thankful that even though he took everything he had, he didn't take much.
Yep.
And then he said, I'm thankful for the fact that I was the one being robbed and not the one who was robbing. Well, that's profound. He had a perspective on things that still factored in God's goodness and grace in his own life to take him in a healthy direction. And we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the good when bad things are happening. That's one perspective shift to be able to give thanks in all circumstance. Another one is that we need to have the view that goes, no matter how bad this thing or these things may be in my life, God's going to bring good stuff out of them. And we're actually thankful for what's going to happen because we have confidence that God will bring something good out of it, just like he promised, right? All things work together for good, and that all things includes the bad stuff, the hard stuff, works together for the good of those that love God and that he's called for his purposes. I am so reminded that of a chapter in my life where I had left to go take a trip to it was the Soviet Union at the time. It hadn't kind of dismantled yet. And I was there for was supposed to be there for about 3 weeks. And while I was gone, my wife ruptured a disc in her neck. And so she's taken to the hospital. And while she's there, they're trying to figure things out. I'm unaware of what's going on at this point. But they were giving her all sorts of drugs and all sorts of tests and MRIs and x-rays. And before everything they gave her or every test she had, she was asked, "You're not pregnant, are you?" And she said, "No, I'm not." Because we were done having kids and we'd even dropped our maternity insurance. Well, I get word of everything that was happening. I take an emergency flight back. I'm there when she has neurosurgery, ask the same questions. Turns out she was pregnant the whole time. So when we went back for a early follow-up visit with a neurosurgeon, we told him that, as it turns out, she was pregnant. And he looked right at us and he said, "You've got to have an abortion." And we were like, we can't do that. And he goes, "You don't understand." He said, "You are in a super high-risk pregnancy." And then he began listing off all of these things that he described as a likelihood that would happen to the fetus. And we said, we cannot abort a child. So we know that God knew all along, and we know that there are no guarantees, but we're not gonna end the life. Then he goes, "Well, this is going to cost you a lot of money." At which point we said we've dropped our health insurance or our maternity insurance. And I remember this beautiful man who was this incredibly skilled surgeon who served us so well. He dropped his head onto his hands on the desk. Then he looked up and shook his head and goes, "You guys go bankrupt. You'll go bankrupt." I remember when we left the office and our impulse in the face of all of that was to thank God for a life that he had a purpose for, and to thank God for the opportunity for him to show himself good.
Yeah.
We had no guarantees, just we didn't know. Maybe we would go bankrupt.
Right.
Maybe we would have a child that would have all sorts of special needs. But we were grateful for the opportunity that God gave us to demonstrate that we loved him, wanted to be faithful, and that God would bring good out of it. Now, our story had a uber happy ending. Healthy child, athletic child, our youngest daughter, Lindsay, shout out to you, Lindsay, who ended up going to college on a running scholarship with her athletic ability. And all of our financial needs, because we still, had all the expenses, God provided so that every dime was paid for.
It's amazing.
We didn't know that was going to happen, but we were thankful that God was going to bring good out of it. And that is the kind of spirit I want to have all the time. And God challenges us to have so that in all circumstances, we can give thanks.
Yeah.
God will bring something good out of it. And then, maybe I should bring a third one up too. We also need to have a change of perspective that says, if I stay faithful in the midst of this hardship, God will reward me forever. One of the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, chapter 2, I think it was the church of Smyrna. God has a little mini address to several different churches that were scattered around at that particular time. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said to them, okay, you're about to go through some junk. You're going to suffer. Some of you are going to be imprisoned. Some of you are going to die. And then he goes, don't worry about this tribulation, this trial, because if you are faithful, I will give you a crown of life. A crown is symbolic. We're not going to actually have a crown sitting on our head, I don't think. It's symbolic of a reward that we will receive for our faithfulness, in this case, through hardship. And whatever that reward is, it's going to be a source of enjoyment and satisfaction that will last forever. So we don't give thanks for everything. We give thanks in everything.
Yeah.
God is going, shift your perspective. Don't lose sight of my good, even when bad things happen. Remember, I'm going to bring good in this life out of the bad that is happening, and I will reward you for all eternity for staying faithful. And if we can have that perspective shift, then even when the bottom falls out and bad things happen, we can be thankful in all things.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever I have conversations with people that are like, oh yeah, I'm going through this, I tend to tell them two things. One, what you're going through right now, if you stay faithful and you stay the course, God's going to use this as your testimony down the line. Mm-hmm. And watch how God will put somebody in your life that's experiencing what you've already gone through so that you can help them through it. And two, whenever we're in the moment, as you said earlier, it can consume every thought and every action that we're doing. Well, at that point, it feels like it's the biggest thing in the world. Well, if you look back on it a year later, it'll be this tiny little blip in your full story. So just trying to remember, like, okay, this might be tough now, but God's going to use it so I can impact other people down the line. Mm-hmm. And also, this thing that feels so big in the grand scheme of things might not be as big as I'm making it out to be right now. So, absolutely. Thank you for diving into that. So, another one that kind of ties into this question.
Okay.
It says, hold on, having some technical difficulties. There we go. With so many problems in the world, how do I become more thankful? How do you balance gratitude with being realistic?
Ah, yes. Balancing gratitude and realism. That's a really interesting question. That's
a very interesting question.
Hopefully, some of what we just talked about will help in this. Mm-hmm. I will say, just observation, we get all of the bad things that happen all over the world pumped into our news feed every single day.
Absolutely.
It's like bad news is the news, right? Yeah. And so it gets pumped into our news feed. It doesn't matter how you consume news, TV, radio, you're getting it on your phone, whatever your method is. We have that pumped in. And we're in a political season. Of course, are we ever not in a political season anymore? It seems like they never end, right?
Are. Yeah.
And let's realize something, because it's really important. And that is that fear is used by politicians to motivate people to vote.
Yeah.
Fear is what do you hear all the time? I mean, you need to rally around this cause, this politician, this whatever, because you got to vote to stave off doomsday. It's all so fear-driven, because fear manipulates people, motivates people to take action, out of preservation. So maybe one of the things that would help is turn off the news for a few days. Maybe just like unplug from it from just a little bit. That might help a little. But when I look around, because sometimes I do, at a world that's like, it's madness. The world is madness. I remind myself of a true story that we all need to remind ourselves of. In fact, God is so insistent that we remind ourselves of this true story that he told the church we need to periodically take time to focus on this one story just to remember. It's what we did on Sunday with communion. Mm-hmm. I look at the day in which Jesus was crucified as the day that the world lost its mind. It went stark raving mad. It killed love incarnate. It destroyed hope. It was utter chaos and madness. And just to recount some of the things that happened, because they become very important. Jesus was betrayed by a close friend for 30 pieces of silver. All of his best friends, everybody, including all of his best friends, abandoned him. Mm-hmm. He was taken, stripped, his back was whipped, his head was beaten, he was spit on, and his beard was plucked out. That would be an unpleasant sensation.
Yeah, that would be very painful.
Then he was taken, and spikes were driven through his wrist and his ankles onto a cross, which was hoisted up in the sky, and he was crucified, which was excruciatingly painful. You actually died of suffocation. It was a horrible, agonizing death. Yeah. It was intended to communicate a message to all wrongdoers. This is your fate. Watch these people suffer. As Jesus hung on the cross, his major joints all were dislocated. I don't know if you've ever had a dislocated joint. Very painful. Yeah. Shoulders, hips, out of socket, very painful, which was common, by the way, in crucifixion. The soldiers who were watching him and executing him, they took his clothes and they played a gambling game to see who could get them. When the day was about done, and it was time to make sure that the criminals were dead, the normal procedure was to break their legs so they couldn't push up and get a breath and they would die of suffocation quicker. But in this case, they didn't do that to Jesus. They took a sword and rammed it through his side and into his chest, and all of this bodily fluid and blood comes out. And he was definitely dead, so they took him down from the cross, and he was hastily buried in a rich person's tomb. That was the day the world lost its mind. They hated love. They killed hope. Everything was chaos and totally out of control. And it seemed as though all was lost. Except it wasn't. Every single thing that I just described that happened to Jesus that day, God predicted hundreds of years ago would happen exactly like he said. Nothing surprised God. In fact, God's hand was only allowing, or was in some cases directing, everything that happened on that day of utter madness and chaos so that it would prove his word is true, Jesus is his son, and redemption has now been made available to the entire world. And in a day of madness and chaos and evil and destruction and pain beyond anything else the world has ever experienced, God was in control, bringing beautiful, good things out of it. And I think we just need to remind ourselves, when we look at a world that's gone mad, God is using the madness to bring goodness into the world. Now, this, Josh, I think this really only affects us emotionally if our primary allegiance is to Jesus and his kingdom and not to ourselves and this world. Because if our primary allegiance is to ourselves, our own happiness, and to this world, then when the world goes mad, you're going to be fearful, you're going to be insecure. I mean, you're going to be an emotional wreck.
Right.
But if our allegiance is in Jesus and his kingdom, then we're a member of a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and we follow a king that cannot fail. And so we can be utterly secure and confident no matter what. God is doing good stuff out of this. And make no mistake, God will shake earthly kingdoms in order to build his eternal kingdom.
Yes, he will.
He will do it. I love it. You remember when Paul was in Athens in Acts chapter 17, and he delivers this sermon to these very educated, philosophical, intellectual people, and he's commenting about all of these statues to all of these gods to make sure they didn't leave any out, and he was talking about the one to the unknown God. Yep. And he goes, I want to tell you about the unknown God. He's talking about Jesus, right? And he makes a statement in there. He said, God, who made the world and everything in it, doesn't dwell in temples made with hands as though God can be worshiped in this kind of way. But he goes, but God has determined the times of all the nations and the boundaries of their kingdoms. In other words, he's saying this nation against nation, this kingdom rises up, this one gets conquered, the territory and boundaries get pushed back, all that kind of stuff. God is sovereign over, and he allows all of those kings to be shaken up. He allows all of that turmoil and chaos to happen for this reason. He goes, in the hopes that people might seek God and find him because, and I love this statement, he is not far from any one of us. Yeah. And God will shake this world or allow it to be shaken to stir people to seek him. And if we're aware of that, our allegiance is in the king that can't fail and the king that can't be shaken, we can be thankful even when chaos is happening all around us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. Again, both those questions are very good.
Yeah.
And it makes you think around Thanksgiving, to give thanks for things.
Yes.
And to go like, how am I supposed to be thankful for X, Y, and Z? So
yes.
All right.
And be thankful, Josh, for the deeper things.
Yeah.
I am grateful that I'm thankful that I am good health. I'm thankful that I, have a nice. That's good. We should be.
Yeah.
But there are deeper, more profound things
sure.
that when we're aware of, our gratitude goes so much deeper that even if that other stuff fades away, gratitude remains.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and dive into our next question. Mm-hmm. When we celebrate our family Thanksgiving, it seems like there's always tension and friction from past problems.
Yeah.
I get this. I can relate.
Oh, yeah.
I can relate.
Exactly.
Is there anything that can be done about that? Should we not invite certain family members?
Okay.
This is a great question.
It's a great question. Talk about practical, too.
I can relate. I can relate.
I think, Josh, in our increasingly fractured and broken world, holiday times are not so much, there's less like warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feelings, and there's more like grief and sorrow and tension. That's sad, but it's true. Yeah. This is a reflection of the world that we live in. So I really appreciate this question being asked. Is there anything to be done? Well, let's see. Thanksgiving is tomorrow, so this advice needs to be really good, right?
It needs to be really quick, because if you haven't invited them yet, your lunch might be at 12 o'clock, and you have 26 hours until you guys are eating.
And the good news is I think there are things that can really help.
Yeah.
And obviously I have so many follow-up questions to this one, right? As
sure.
we've talked about before, I just got to kind of read into it and maybe guess. So given the limited information I have, let me see if I can offer some things that might be of practical value in real time right away. One, because I don't want to make this assumption. If you're a part of the problem and you've done things or you've stirred up things, then my suggestion is sometime today or really early in the Thanksgiving time tomorrow, go to anybody you offended and go, hey man, I blew it. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Just make amends in that way. That would go a long way toward helping.
I feel like Jesus said that somewhere in the Bible.
I think that rings a bell, Josh.
Somewhere in the Bible. Matthew 18. Go read it. It's amazing.
So that I would say off the bat, do that. Then a couple of things that can help in the moment. One, adjust your expectations.
Yeah.
Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. That's a fascinating statement. When our expectations aren't met, it brings emotional turmoil from frustration to sorrow.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So adjust your expectations. Guess what? The odds are, I'm guessing from what the questioner said, there are going to be some awkward moments at the family Thanksgiving table tomorrow. So don't be surprised by it.
Yeah.
Expect the fact that it's going to happen. Because if you expect it and you're not caught by surprise, it will help you keep your head when those moments happen. So kind of just expect the fact that that's going to be there. Then have a game plan. It's always good if you go, there's a likelihood A is going to happen. If it does, I'm going to do B. This is going to be my response. So you don't have to think in that moment, what do I do? And things are all emotional and everything else. So have a game plan. And I'll give you a tactic that I think is really helpful. And I call it the gentle redirect. I get it from Proverbs 15 and verse 1. It says, a soft answer or a gentle response diminishes anger. It deflects anger.
Yeah.
So rather than putting fuel on the fire, which we can do if we react emotionally, whether it be hurt or whether it be frustration or anger. Instead, be prepared that when that jab, that critique, that sarcastic statement that's intended to really inflame, however it shows up in your family, because it shows up differently in every family. When it happens, I'm going to use my gentle redirect. I'm going to share a positive story, a positive memory. I'm going to praise somebody for something they've done. I'm just going to nudge the conversation immediately in a different direction so that it has a different emotional flavor to it. And that gentle nudge can do amazing things to keep real tension from developing in the room. So I would suggest you use that as a tactic. If gentle nudges, if the gentle redirect doesn't work, then do something bold.
Food fight.
That's not a strategy I thought of, but it is a way of getting the tension out of the room. So.
I'm just kidding. Do not do a food fight. That was a joke.
Do they realize that you grew up in an Italian family, Josh? And so
we had food fights with ourselves when we ate because we were so messy. If you grew up in an Italian household, you know what I'm talking about.
So, just when things are like, man, this is getting really tense, just stop and go, hey, everybody, can I just say something? I would really like it if just for this Thanksgiving, we could all just be kind to each other. And say something positive about everybody. I believe that this is what we all want. So, if nothing else, for my sake, could we just be chill just this one time? And let's just enjoy the day. It's okay when all the other stuff doesn't work to say something like that. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, and I'm trying to work through as it gets worse and worse and doesn't happen. If there's a person that's like, nope, they are not going to make peace no matter what. They're not going to suck it up and go through the day. Have a little sidebar with them. Pull them aside, hey, can you help me in the kitchen? Whatever you need to do, and go, hey, could you possibly do that? Could you do this for me? Just help us to have this one time. Do a personal appeal, but do that personal appeal in private. Don't single a person out in front of everybody, but just have that little thing. Can you do that for me? And that can help. I would never want to get to the place where a family member simply wasn't invited. However, under the worst of case of scenarios, if a person refuses everything and is intent on disrupting the family event, and it makes it miserable for everybody, we're told in Proverbs chapter 22, cast off the scoffer and strife will cease. And one of the principles there is, if one person is going to make it miserable for everyone, then if we can remove that person, at least for the event, don't cut your relationship off with that person. Have a separate Thanksgiving celebration with that person, but just say, you know what? Clearly, us being together is a little beyond our capability right now, so let's not do that. But I love you. I want to spend time with you and do it. That might become necessary. That's a longer term thing. And then obviously beyond what this Thanksgiving is, whatever the underlying tensions are, you need to address them.
For sure.
Be a peacemaker. And as we learned about making peace, it starts with you treating other people right. Yeah. So be fair, be just, be kind, be respectful. Never treat other people rudely or wrongly. Treat them right. And then encourage counseling, conversation, forgiveness, whatever it is, but try to be a peacemaker in the long term so the underlying tensions can be drained and Thanksgiving time or any time you're together can be a more enjoyable experience.
For sure. I want to take this question a little bit deeper because obviously we're operating off of the information that was given by this person asking the question. And I could imagine there might be some people that are kind of thinking the same thing. Well, what if this family member did something very wrong? Not just like, oh, there's some tension between him or that person and their brother, but was to the point of they went to jail for something of a certain magnitude that is very immoral and wrong, or they did something to the family that was very harmful and hurtful. Does it reach a certain point where it's like, okay, maybe we should distance ourselves from this person for the holiday season?
Is it possible that there are circumstances that wisdom would dictate a degree of separation? Yes. It really depends on the circumstance, right?
Yeah.
But if the question is it possible? Yes, it might be that's the healthy thing to do for everyone.
Yeah.
But some things to keep in mind of that. First of all, if the person did something that was criminal and they spent time in jail or whatever the case may happen to be, people like that, they actually need a measure of affirmation and restoration. And if they're family members, we should be agents of reformation and restoration in that person's life. We need to act toward them in a way that represents God's heart toward them. If they actually transgressed against the family in deeply wounded ways, then it would be necessary for those wounds to be addressed and for those wounds to be dealt with in a healthy way by everyone in order to reintegrate relationships. It's like if there's a serious relational fracture, you can't just get together and pretend that everything is okay. If there's a deep relational fracture, that's the kind of wound that has to be tended to.
Yeah, for sure.
If it's just like we never got along as kids and you said something I didn't like and we irritate each other, it's like, okay, can we have peace for Thanksgiving? That's possible because that's like a scrape you can put a Band-Aid on, but there are wounds that are deep enough that Band-Aids aren't called for, and there's got to be some measure of addressing it before there can even be integration of relationships with people.
So we can't avoid conflict.
We can, and it always makes things worse.
Yeah. Yes, we definitely can, but we shouldn't. That's what I should have said. We shouldn't avoid conflict. Yes, conflict is hard, but it's necessary.
It's necessary.
And there also is a thing that people get so lost because of back to the political thing and the political realm. There's no such thing as healthy conflict, but there is such thing as healthy conflict and working through your problems.
There is. And it's like, again, Proverbs 51, soft answer. We don't want to be antagonistic. We don't want to be inflammatory. It's a great skill to learn when to let something go and when to address something that's said or done. That's a great skill that requires judgment. That means, how significant it is, what's the history behind it. So it's a very nuanced dance you have to go through, but developing that level of discernment to make a good judgment call in the moment of let it go or maybe say something, very important to do.
For sure. Well, thank you for tackling these questions.
They were great. Boy, you know what? They were all kind of holiday questions, but there was some tough stuff in there.
Yeah, they were really good questions, and it was a really good time to address the topic of thankfulness, especially whenever the holidays, Thanksgiving, and giving thanks to things. As always, if you have any questions, literally about anything in the Bible, or from deconstruction, or from any message that we have done so far, you can go to my3c.org. You can go to submit a question. Totally anonymous. You can put it in there. We all have no idea who it is. If you do want us to know who you are, because you want to share more information that you don't want us to share on the post show, or on the Q&A or anything, you can put your email on there and we can reach back out to you. You can scan the QR code that's on the bottom side of the screen to be able to submit a question to get connected. Just go ahead and do that if you have any question at all, because this is possible because you guys are submitting questions for this. And we want to continue to do this as long as you guys find interest in hearing us talk. And I guess we must do a decent enough job if they keep coming back.
There's just something healthy about taking real life questions and grappling with them.
Absolutely.
We all need to. I do it. You do it, Josh. And there's just something healthy about doing it, and
absolutely,
and being willing to at least tackle it and share perspective and try to give a measure of understanding. There's so much more that can be said about everything that you and I talk about in our Q&As, but at least it's an honest effort to grapple with issues, and there's benefit of that for all of us.
For sure. Well, again, Dave, thank you for diving into it. Before we go, tomorrow at 12:30 is the Packers versus the Lions.
Yes.
I know we got a lot of Lions fans that are listening.
Lots of Lions fans. Yep.
But you're a Packers fan.
I am. I'm a Wisconsin native.
Would you classify yourself as a realistic Packers fan?
One, is there actually any such thing as a realistic fan of any team? Because we're biased, right?
Well, it's true. We are biased. I'm a very biased Patriots fan, but this year I feel like my bias has gone away because we're horrible.
You know what? This year I feel better about being a Packer fan knowing that you're a Patriots fan.
Fair. It's fair.
I was realistic. I thought going into this year, and I knew it was going to be a rebuilding year, and I didn't anticipate we're going to do well. I just wanted to see growth and development as a team, and I've seen some of that, so I'm a little bit encouraged, but I'm very realistic going in tomorrow. Absolutely. Packers by 28.
Did you make a bet with anyone to where you have,
No,
so you have to wear
not a
a
chance.
Lions shirt on stage?
Not a chance.
Because you
Not
know
a
you might not
chance.
win that
If
one.
I had to make a bet, my heart is with Green Bay, but my money, it would be on the Lions.
We'll be on the Lions. There you go. It's clipped. Dave's cheering for the Lions.
I am not cheering for the Lions.
It should be a good day. It should be a fun day.
It'll be a fun day.
Yeah, it'll be a fun day. Well, we hope you guys have a great time with your family for Thanksgiving, whether you're doing it today, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever you're doing it. We hope that you enjoy that time. If there is any tension, go have those conversations with people. It is one of the things that Jesus tells us to do.
Yeah.
But just a reminder, this upcoming Sunday, we have 3 services in person, 8:20, 9:40, and 11 o'clock. We have our pre-show that starts at 9:25 for our online audience for the second service, and then we have our post-show directly following. So we highly encourage you, even if you come in person, to go back and watch the pre-show and the post-show, because there's a lot of really, really good information.
Good stuff in it. Absolutely.
In that, we're starting our new series called Gift Exchange. Dave's going to be tackling that. I'm very excited to see everything that we're going to be talking about.
I think, boy, the first message for this Sunday, I think, will really apply to everybody and just give some real hope and direction in the holiday season.
For sure. And if you are, I know the holiday season can be rough for a lot of people from family loss or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is one of the best times, whether it's you or somebody you know that is struggling with depression or anything throughout this holiday season, to invite them to church, to come and experience Jesus, to come and experience this community, to be able to help them through a tougher time in this year. So if that is you or you know somebody, I highly encourage you to invite them to one of our services this Sunday. But until then, have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Enjoy all the food. Don't overeat. And we'll see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.